Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
As sunlight streamed through the bedroom window this morning, I watched my wife getting dressed, preparing for work. She noticed me stirring and smiled warmly. "Better get up soon, lazy head, or you'll be late for work," she teased, playfully tugging at the covers. I couldn't resist pulling her down for a hug, kissing her all over her face. She laughed and gently pulled away, reminding me she had to finish getting ready. "Your memory must be slipping, Deb," I replied with a grin. "I'm taking the car in for the transmission work today. That's another $2,000 down the drain on that foreign ride you love." She had insisted on an expensive German car, and while it was sleek, the upkeep was draining our budget. Debbie, my wife, was truly beautiful, inside and out. Her blonde hair and graceful demeanor turned heads wherever she went, and she had a figure that most would envy. I knew plenty of guys had tried to hit on her, even right in front of me sometimes, but her loyalty was something I never doubted. She only had eyes for me, and fidelity was a clear, unspoken agreement between us. There was never a reason for me to worry, at least, so I thought. She blew me a kiss as she ran out the door to get to work on time. As she left, I just had to smile knowing she was my love and my life. You couldn't pry the smile from my face that morning. Later that morning, I found I would not smile for a long time after that day. Sometime you just can't avoid a shitstorm, and it was headed right at me. I didn't start it, cause it, or even know it was coming until that very morning. This is what happened after that beautiful morning day, and why my disposition had so radically changed. It was about 9:30 a.m. when I got back to the house. The car dealership gave me a ride back home in one of their courtesy cars. I thought the only real courtesy was to not take all my money, just most of it. I now realized why I like American cars so much. Well, I was just getting ready to make some coffee and the phone rang. I missed it before I could get it, so I waited to see if they left a message. After a minute, I saw the message light blink red. I pushed play, and my whole world started to collapse. "Michael, this is Tanya Fielding, and I just wanted to say I am sorry for you. And if you need anything, please stop by or call, anytime. And I mean it. Love you, Michael, and stay strong." The message stopped, and I saw the light still blinking, meaning I had more messages. It was Tanya Fielding from my church. She was a very close friend of my mother, and it was a very weird message. What the hell was she talking about? I was wondering that as I hit the play all messages button by habit. The next 20 messages were from old friends, neighbors, and even my old track coach, Mr. Slater, believe it or not. His message made it all clear. He was never one to beat around the bush. "Tell that bitch of a wife she is not welcome in this town. I hope the whole town tar and feather her. That would be almost too kind for the likes of her. Michael gave me a call, and let's talk soon, son. Be strong, boy, and remember you still have good friends in this town. Oh, and if you drop the worthless 304, my niece Mary is available, and she is beautiful too. I know you will like her later, Mike." Well, I was really worried now. What the hell is going on around here? Just then I heard my car pull in the driveway in a hurry and skid to a stop. I gave Deb my car for the day and took hers in for repair. I could hear her coming up the walkway very fast with her heels clicking on the brick stone path that leads to the front door. 2 seconds later, she comes in carrying a 2-foot by 4-foot poster, but would not show it to me. She was just waving it and screaming at the top of her lungs. "How could you do this to me, Michael? I thought you loved me. This is the lowest thing anyone has ever done to me. Tell me why you did it. Tell me. Couldn't we just talk about this instead of the shit you just pulled on me?" They were all over my work building. She was livid, and I didn't know that the hell was going on. "Deb, I don't know what you're talking about, but I just got some really strange and disturbing calls on our answering machine." I answered back. "Don't change the subject, damn it. Why did you do this?" She asked me again. This time I saw part of the poster she was waving around. I jumped towards her faster than she realized, and I grabbed the poster from her hands and just looked at it. Time seemed to stand still. "What is this, Deb?" I asked her with my hands shaking. The poster had several pictures of my wife in various sexual positions with her boss. "Why are you on a poster screwing your boss from work, Deborah?" I only called her that once when I was really mad at her when we first got married. It was a huge fight, and I promised her I would never call her by her given name but by Deb or Debbie. She said I can only call her that because it sounded like I was yelling at her when I used her full name. I don't think the use of her full name was lost on her, and her eyes opened wide in fear. "Why is our wedding picture on it with both our faces?" I asked her. It spelled out Deborah's full name, address, cell number, and work numbers. The poster also gave the same info for Mr. Paul Perdue, Deborah's boss at work. At the bottom, it requested to call me for support in this tough time. And there was my name, address, home phone, and cell phone. It said, "Tell Michael he still has friends in the community and show your support to this faithful husband who was wronged by a cheating wife." It also requested that you call the main number of Deborah's office to complain about her and Mr. Perdue's sort of behavior. I just looked at her for the first time in my life with no love in my heart. It was snapped in two as soon as I saw the picture. So how long has this been going on, Deborah? Don't I do it for you anymore, Deborah? Was I not home enough, Deborah? Was he bigger than me, Deborah? Was he better in bed than me, Deborah? What the hell is wrong with you? I love you with all my heart and soul, and you treat me like this? So how long has this been going on, Deborah? Well, how long? I shouted at her. She looked confused, but rounded up the wagon trains for the fight. Stop the pretend nonsense. Only you could get our wedding picture, and know my cell number listed on that poster. Only a handful of close relatives and friends have my cell number. Try to explain away that one a-hole, she finished. I just stood there staring at the person who I thought was my wife. Who the hell this person was in front of me, I had no idea. The confused look on my face must have made her hesitate for a second. I was never much of a poker player and I could never bluff. On my mother's grave, I did not make or put up that poster, Deb. She looked in terror as she realized I knew nothing about whatever the hell was happening. When I promised on my mom's grave, she knew I was telling her the truth. She collapsed in the chair crying and her shoulders fell. So, Deborah, how long has this been going on? You never gave me an answer. I asked right to her face. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes and started to talk. I am so sorry, Michael. It was just a small fling and it meant nothing to me. I only saw him once and that was it. It must have been the same time someone took pictures of us together. I had no idea someone took pictures. I never wanted to hurt you. I would. She tried to tell more, but the doorbell rang and I just went to the door by habit. I was going to tell any well-wishers on my part to stay out of my business until I figure out what the hell was going on in my life. I opened the door and there was my sister Carol. I felt like crap and didn't need family around feeling sorry for me until I straightened everything out. Carol, it's a bad time right now. Can you come back tomorrow? I asked her. No. Just open the door and I will fill you in. I know more than you and you need answers, she said as she pushed her way in. She was carrying a few of the same type posters Deborah just brought in earlier. Well, if it isn't the hooker from Babylon in person, she said, looking at Deborah at the dining room table when she walked in the house. What is that supposed to mean, Carol? I thought we were friends? You can't just come in my house and call me names, bitch. Deborah answered back. I saw a spark in my sister's eye I have never seen. It scared me totally. I was even afraid of her, and she was my sister. Tell you what, bitch, let's air all your dirty laundry and see who the bitch really is, she said to Deborah, and I could see she was afraid, very afraid. First, let's go into the den where your TV set up is, Michael, because I need to play a DVD for you. She looked at me and was reading my mind. Don't worry, Michael, it is not Deborah acting like a hooker with any men, though I have all of that documented. As Carol said this, my head snapped towards my wife. She was looking down at the ground and wouldn't look me in the eye. It is actually much sadder video than that. It does concern her, though, Carol said as she pointed to Deborah. Deborah looked up for a second when her name was mentioned, but dropped her head in shame again. Deborah suddenly got up to leave and said she didn't need any of this shit. As she got up to leave the house, I stood in front of her. If I have to, I will break both your legs if you try and leave now. I need answers, and it looks like my sister has it covered. Get in the den now, was all I said. Deborah knew I was the most pissed off she has ever seen me. She even recoiled when I made my threat. Don't even go to the bathroom right now. We all walked into the den with Carol, literally pushing Deborah through the room and onto the sofa. Michael, before I start, I need to tell you something. First, let me ask you a question. Do you remember the day Mom died? Carol asked me sadly. Well, my face fell and I looked instantly sad also. The memories of my mom dying were still raw even after almost 1 year later. Combined with my new news about my cheating wife, I was crushed. I remember missing Mom by 15 minutes to say goodbye when she passed away that day. It still bothered me to this day. I just nodded. Well, Michael, Mom made me promise on her deathbed to take care of you. Well, that is not all, but you will see. I got there that day about 1:30 p.m. Mom called me and said she needed to talk to me real bad. I could tell she was upset and not feeling good just by her voice. She then said never mind and told me she would tell me tomorrow. I, of course, left work and went to her house instantly. I am glad I did too. She told me, well, let's just see the disc, it will explain a lot. She finished. Carol went in her purse and pulled out a DVD disc. Michael, the only reason I am showing you this now is because Mom and Deborah made a promise to each other the day she died. What promise did you make to my mom, Deborah? Well, what was it? I asked her, but she said nothing. Just push play and watch the tape. Then you will understand everything, Michael. Carol instructed me. I did it, and the screen came alive with my mom's old bedroom. She was in bed with the covers pulled up, and she looked like hell. She was white as a ghost and sweating. Her eyes were all over the room, and she looked the saddest I ever saw her. Even sadder than when Dad passed away 6 years earlier from cancer. I saw the camera move and finally settle on the big dresser across from the bed. This angle let me look at the bed with my mom and Carol talking. This is what was said. Carol, you sure it is recording? I don't know much about all that electronic stuff, but this is important. Mom, it is fine. Just relax and try to stay calm, okay? Carol said, trying to get her to calm down. Now just tell me what is bothering you, and I will help. Well, I went to the new restaurant today, Danella's on 5th St. All the ladies from my card club wanted to go, so we broke the bank on our club kitty and went in first-class style. I was having a great time and needed to go to the bathroom. My medicine alert went off, and I needed to take my medication. It was a huge place, so I went walking around till I found the ladies' room. After I came out, I started to go back to my table to cut one of my heart pills, but something caught my eye. I did a double take to see if I was just seeing things, or it was real. There at another table was Debbie, Michael's Debbie, with another man. He was very tall with a mustache and an expensive suit. They were kissing, and he had his hand under her skirt. Well, she was all smiles and giggling while they played kissy face. I was just beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I knew Michael would be crushed if he found out. I lost all respect for Debbie right there and then. I walked up to the table to talk to her, but with every step I got more and more angry. By the time I reached their table, I did a terrible thing. She just let the word hang, and Carol asked what she did. I slapped that bitch in the face as hard as I could. I was aiming for both their faces, but the guy ducked out of instinct when he saw my arms start to swing. Debbie wasn't so lucky. I connected and I heard her head snap back and to the side. I saw the red imprint from my hand on her cheek, and the look on her face said she never saw it coming. I never ever hit anyone in my life, that is how angry I was. I pushed pause on the DVD and looked at Deborah. So the day you came home with the black and blue cheek, you didn't run into a door like you said, but my mom actually slapped you because she caught you cheating on me at a restaurant? Well? I asked her. Yes, I am sorry, is all she could say in a small, low voice. I just shook my head, sighed, and pressed play again, and my mom's voice picked right up with the story. Well, she tried to give me a bunch of bullshit lies and crap you normally hear from a cheater who was caught. I told her to save her breath. Then I did something she wasn't expecting. Make me a promise right now. Right now. I yelled at her right in the restaurant. You will not break my son's heart, and neither will I. If you promise to be true to my son and never cheat on him again, I will forget I was ever here. I will say nothing to Michael, though I would love to. He has been a great husband to you, and this is how you treat him. I do not want to be the one to tell him, but I will if need be. So before you leave with your arm candy next to you, tell him and me what your promise is. And you better be quick about it. Debbie promised with tears in her eyes to me that she would stay faithful to Michael. I told her that she already broke her promise to Michael, and I don't take my promises lightly. If I ever found out she cheated on Michael again and broke her promise to me, she would wish she was never born. I took her at her word, but I still don't trust her. This is where you come in, Carol. I need you to. No, I want you to promise me, if Debbie ever breaks her promise that she made to me, that you show her the path to hell firsthand. I am not sure what you mean, Mom. What is it you want me to do? Carol asked. First, keep an eye on her, a close eye. Protect Michael if you can, but if she cheats again, then take care of her for good. I want you to expose her for the 304 she is. I know God will punish me for calling her names, but I am still upset. I have found that cheaters like cockroaches hate the bright light. If she fails Michael and breaks her promise to me and him, I want you to expose her publicly to everyone in town. I also want you to ask Michael's friends to rally around him for support. If she backslides on our promise, he will feel alone and lost. I don't think that bitch has any idea how much Michael really loves her. I think if she really knew, she would have never strayed in the first place. Okay, Mom, I will do as you ask. Carol answered. Now if she keeps her word, this conversation never happened, and I will take it to my grave. You must promise me you will never ever tell Michael or show him the recording unless she cheats again. Promise me, Carol. I promise, Mom, she said sadly. Good. Oh, by the way, I saw your father earlier, you know. As she said this, my mom had a smile as big as Texas. A mom. Daddy died 6 years ago. You do remember? Carol asked her. Yes, Carol, I know, but I slept before you arrived, and he sat at the foot of the bed and told me to smile and said he was waiting for me. I love you, Carol, and tell Michael I love him also. She paused after this and was silent for a second. I could see tears in her eyes. Now if all stays the same, then they will live a good life together. If she fails, then I would also like you to do something for me. At this point, she motioned for Carol to come closer and whispered into her ear. Carol opened her eyes wide for a second, and just shrugged her shoulders. Okay, Mom, just repeat it one more time so I remember. At this point, Carol leaned back down to hear her mother whisper in her ear once more. Mom, you should really relax. I just called Michael. He is coming right now and he wants to see you. Carol told her mother as she straightened up. Carol, I am feeling very weak, honey. I just need to get some sleep. I want to dream of your father again. It makes me feel good. She ended weakly. I love you, Carol, very much. Tell Debbie to keep her promise and tell Michael I love him. She finished quietly, almost unable to hear her last word on the TV. My mother died at that moment. Carol took the remote from my motionless hand and pressed stop. The Carol on the screen was leaning over the lifeless body of my mother, crying when the picture went dark. That was the scene when I arrived that day, and it brought back a flood of memories. I realized what the DVD meant and the promise Deborah broke to me and my mother. I rounded on her and grabbed her by the arms as she sat on the couch crying. Look at me. Look at me. I yelled to her face. She looked up between her hair and her crying eyes that said she was sorry or sorry she got caught. I wasn't sure. You broke a promise to Mom and me. I don't think you slept with Paul Perdue only once, did you? Well, don't look away. Answer me. Did you sleep with him again? I asked loudly. Yes, is all she could say in soft voice. Carol came back in room at that point. I didn't see her leave, but she returned holding the posters she arrived with earlier. Here is what your unfaithful wife has been up to since her promise to Mom was broken. The detective reports, videos, and pictures are in the car, but I did think you wanted to see the posters I made. I took Mom's last request to heart. She said, smiling. Your loving wife was being followed since she was at Mom's funeral a year ago. She actually was true for about 5 months. I think the incident in the restaurant with Mom got her scared. But after the funeral, no one said anything, and you never changed Michael, so she thought she was off the hook. She thought the promise she made to a dying woman did not have to be honored. I almost gave up the PI surveillance, but got a funny note from the detective that last month. Deborah was going to lunch with the same man for a week straight, Paul Perdue. Your precious wife thought she could break her promise to Mom as easily as she broke her promise to you. First, let me inform you she has cheated with 5 men since the day Mom died. There may be more, but that is all we documented up till now. She had an extended relationship with 3 of them. When she said this, I looked at Deborah, and she just melted in front of me. The first poster is the one you were looking at that Deborah brought home. I plastered them everywhere at her work site. I asked for support for you, Michael, and embarrassment for Deborah and her sex buddies. The other 2 posters are the same, but with different people. The second poster is of Reverend Taylor. You know him, Michael. Betty, his wife, is good friends with your wife, Deborah. Imagine that. I put these all over the church and the cars of the people attending services this morning, she finished. Debbie lifted her head as soon as she heard Taylor's name and saw the poster. It had Deborah in sexual positions with the holy man himself in all his glory. Again, it had my picture on it in my wedding photo. She realized just what it meant. My wife cried out no and went silent. But that is not the last one. Your lovely wife has been seeing a Mr. Edward O'Brien. And at this, she presented the poster with the same message, but had Edward O'Brien in the pictures having sex with Deborah. I put these all over his neighborhood and home. I rounded on Deborah again and shouted at her. You were even screwing Eddie the Snake O'Brien? Oh my God. That guy screws anything, and I mean some of the nastiest 304s and crack hookers in town. I probably have the clap or some nasty disease now. Holy shit. Eddie the Snake, I still don't believe it. You will never touch me again. I yelled at her as I pushed her away from me like she was infected. I was so angry I was shaking. My sister pulled me up and pushed me in the direction of the front door. I just stood in the hallway waiting for Carol to tell me or direct me into action. I was numb. She went back to Deborah and addressed her. Okay, this is what is going to happen. Stand up and look at me. Carol ordered her. Deborah slowly stood up and tried to look at me in the doorway. Her legs were very shaky on her feet. I am sorry, Michael. I really am. I do love you. She went quiet as Carol gave her a look that would kill. Now you will pack a bag when I take Michael out for some fresh air. In an hour, I want you out of here. I don't care where you go or who you stay with. Check your boy toy stable and see if any of your studs' wives will take you in. Not likely. She finished to my wife. My mom wanted me to give you a message from her before we leave. She wanted to tell you something, and I want to be sure I get this right. She hesitated and recalled what Mom wanted her to say. Okay, here goes. If you had kept your promise to me, you and Michael would have a beautiful, healthy, and happy life together. No one would know what you did today in the restaurant. But since you lied and broke your promise, everything that happens to you has been brought on by yourself. You will have bad health, sadness, and be lonely for the rest of your life. That is my wish for you. With that, Carol wound up and swung her hand around towards Deborah's cheek. I heard the smack just after the hand hit her face. The slap knocked her back down on the couch again. That one is from my mother, bitch. Don't ever talk to me again. You may not have killed my mother, but you sure as hell drove in some of the coffin nails. Carol added as she turned and grabbed my hand and led me out the front door to her car. I knew life would never be the same. I should fill you in on what went on after that day when Deborah was exposed to the world. Almost 2 years later, I was sitting on my porch in a chair when a car came up my driveway. It was Mr. Slater, my old track coach. He was all smiles. He just heard the news and was beside himself. He got out of his car already talking. I just can't believe it. We are going to be related. I told you that day I called you about my niece Mary, and I was right, wasn't I? He asked me as I just smiled, and he shook my hand over and over. Tom, you were absolutely correct. Mary has been the best thing in my life since I met her. I never realized you were talking about the teenage girl in pigtails who brought you your water bottles at practice all those years ago. She is a beautiful woman now, and I am very lucky you introduced us. Thanks for looking after me, Tom. It really meant a lot to me and Carol. I finished as he started to tear up. He punched me in the arm and started to laugh. Look at me, Michael. I am about to cry like a little girl. I better get going and remember to take care of Mary. I know you will, son. See you later, and don't forget my wedding invitation in the first row. He finished as he jumped in his muscle car and drove off. I was doing all right. My mom was correct that I would feel all alone and by myself. The funny thing is, Carol reminded me that was what Mom didn't want. Mom knew me well enough to know I needed a support system. She knows I always kept things inside all to myself. Well, at first, I didn't like everyone reminding me of my situation, but then I got it. My mom knew it also. The people were not prying into my life, but they wanted to make sure that I know they cared about me and my life. They were not digging up old wounds, but giving me support no matter how clumsy it may have seemed trying to do it. These great people in my town were behind me and supporting me. That feeling alone has made all the crap I went through with Deborah look tame. I could still walk around town with my head held high. Deborah didn't fare as well. We divorced as soon as I could. She never contested anything. I got a call from her dad on the West Coast last week filling me in on how she is doing. He still asks if we will ever get back together. She made a mistake. We are all human. She needs you badly. Anything he could think of to get us back as a couple. That was not going to happen. Deborah moved there after only a week in town. She literally became the poster child for cheating in my town. People nicknamed her Poster Girl up until she left town. No one would call her by Deb or Debbie, just Deborah. My sister made sure of that. She was treated like she had leprosy in the town. No one would help her, and I did feel sorry for her, but she brought it upon herself, and it was beyond my control now. She was fired that day. She came home with the poster along with Mr. Paul Perdue. His wife divorced him and took all his money and the kids. He was broke, and everyone in town hated him because of what he did. He left after 2 weeks. Reverend Taylor disappeared that day and left his wife Betty. Nice holy man, I thought. He was reportedly in New York and started another church, but some anonymous source informed the new church members of his past. He is now out of New York, and his location is unknown. Eddie the Snake O'Brien got it the worst. His wife's brothers had enough of Eddie playing around on their sister. When the poster went up around Eddie's house and neighborhood, they beat him up real bad. I didn't feel sorry in the least. He ruined a few marriages in his day. He left town the day he got out of the hospital, and no one seemed to care where he went. The curse my mother put on Deborah seemed to be holding. She was gaining a large amount of weight. She was drinking and taking prescription drugs for depression. She has high blood pressure, diabetes, and is always depressed. She has made no friends at her new location, didn't date anyone, and seems to be going steadily downhill. Her health and her mood were bad and getting worse. Her dad said she was slowly dying, and he could do nothing about it. She had no real friends to speak of. I still love her and always will. I just wish things turned out differently and Deborah had kept her promise. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.